When I was 19 years old, I had a draft card. Well, we all had draft cards. It was the law. You had 18. You turned 18, you had to get a draft card. And it was the war years. Vietnam War was going on. Of course, I was against the war. Pretty much all my friends were against the war. And I was going to college though, so of course I had a college deferment. But some of my friends burned their draft cards. It was sort of the most. It was really the first time we really got into politics. I think was we were hostile to that war and the war. And I thought it's not that hard to burn your draft card. I mean, nobody knows but your friends and your girlfriend. And so what I thought I would do was I'm going to send this draft card back to my draft board. Ooh. And I wrote a letter, I'm sure a very self-righteous letter, and I put my draft card in there and I sent it back to my draft card. And, really, it was nothing. I mean, I dropped the thing in the mailbox and that was that. And I went back to college. I was, my draft board, of course, was in Iowa, but my college was out on the West Coast, so I flew back to Seattle and forgot about the whole thing. One day I was in my dorm room and there was a knock on the door, and my roommate, he gets up and he opens the door and there's two guys with suits out there. Whoa, they pull out badges and identify themselves as FBI agents. My roommate is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. They want to see me. And they asked my roommate very politely, would he leave us alone? Would he give us some privacy? He goes, well, yes, sir. I can't believe he says sir. But anyway, out he goes, and the door closes, and the FBI guys talk to me. Well, one of the FBI guys talks to me, and he explains that they've been notified that I have sent my draft cards back to my draft board, and that's a felony. Do I know what a felony is? And that's 5 years in a federal penitentiary and a fine. I think it was a $5,000 fine. And they said, this whole thing can go away. All you got to do is take back your draft cards. And I said, no, 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 I'm not, no, no, thank you. And are you sure about that? Yes, I am sure about that. And so away they go. Well, meanwhile, my roommate has been running around the dorm, knocking on doors. The FBI, the FBI, the FBI is talking to Gary. So when the FBI left, I was famous. Well, at least in my dorm. People crowded in there. I mean, I never had got so much attention in my life. I loved that. I loved that. I loved all that attention. But once again, nothing really happened. In fact, there were people who started saying they didn't even really believe the FBI had come to see me. If it wasn't for my roommate, I don't know, maybe nobody would have believed it. But anyway, quite a bit of time went by. And then one time it all died down, nothing's going to happen. The FBI talks to you and nothing, I guess. And I was in a room, like a history class or something, and there was a knock on the door, and there was a girl there from the Dean of Students office, and she said, I had a phone call. I better go to the Dean of Students office and take this phone calls from my uncle. My uncle, I had an uncle that lived, south of Seattle, and I thought, oh my God, maybe somebody died. Maybe my mom died. So I went over there and I took the phone call. And the dean, a very nice guy, and he left the room so I could have some privacy. And I looked at the phone number. And man, I didn't know that phone number. That was not my uncle's phone number. It was a local phone number. And I go, oh man, I wonder what that is. So I opened up a phone book. Seattle is this huge phone book, and I looked for the U.S. government numbers, and there were a lot of numbers. And I ran my finger down until I found that number. It was the U.S. Marshal's office. Oh man. So I called up the number, and it was real quickly. I was connected to a U.S. Marshal named Bob, Marshal Bob, and Bob told me that he was going to arrest me. He was going to arrest me the next day. He said the only reason he was telling me all this because he had gone to the same college that I was at. It was a nice little church college, and he could not believe anybody really bad. That's how he put it. I can't believe anybody really bad is going to that college. So if I wanted to talk to a lawyer or anything, but anyway, he was going to come and get me the next morning. And I had to, I promised him that I would be there because I guess he was sort of breaking the rules. I mean, calling me up like that, but he was just doing it as a special favor to a guy going to his college. So I came out of there, and my friends were waiting for me. And what's that phone call? You know, and I told everybody, and man, the news spread like wildfire. Gary's going to be arrested. Gary's going to be arrested. I mean, girls were crying. I was getting hugged by these beautiful girls, and guys were trying to be real manly about the whole thing. And we ought to burn down the Pentagon. And maybe we want some pot. I got some great pot. Get you high. I spent the whole night with this really lovely girl, and that was the first time that ever happened. And the next, I couldn't sleep very much, of course. And the next morning, I got up. I was up early, and bam, 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 here they are, and there's Bob and another guy. And I let him, and the other guy wants to handcuff me. And Bob goes, "No, no, we don't need to handcuff him." So I get in the car. They do that thing, where they put their hand on your head and put me in the back seat, and we're just starting to drive away, and the door to my house bursts open, and a girl comes out, half dressed, and she starts yelling. And the guy driving, he's not Bob, the other guy, he slams on the brakes, and the girl's yelling, "Motherfuckers, motherfuckers!" And to this day, I love that word, motherfuckers. That was probably the best moment of my entire young life. Was that beautiful girl yelling, "Motherfucker!" Anyway, we drive on, and I end up in a holding cell. I have to talk to a magistrate, and the magistrate talks to me, and he tells me the deal is not the same now. I can't just take back my cards. If I want these charges to go away, I'm going to have to enlist. I can enlist in the Army or the Marines. Apparently the Air Force and the Navy are too good for the likes of me, but the Army or the Marines, I can enlist in those. And I say, no, 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 thank you. Okay, then, well, you're going to have to go back to Iowa. And I had bail. It's like $500 bail. And my friends ran around the college knocking on the doors of professors and people like that, and they raised all the bail. I don't know, $500 doesn't seem like that much, but in those days, it wasn't that easy to raise $500. And the professors, they were very liberal. They were very kind and generous, and they forked over the money. And so I didn't spend the night in jail. One thing about the holding cell I remember was it's so boring to be stuck in a holding cell, and there's like solid painted walls on two sides, and then bars on the ends on both sides. And I got real close to the walls, and I noticed scratches, and I really looked at those scratches, and they were like people's names, like Joe, or Richard, or something like that. And I think they had guys in there bored out of their minds, had used their fingernails and carved their names. They just had to leave their mark on that holding cell. Well, I got out, and of course, party, and I was really famous and beloved, and people were interested in me that had never given me the time of day, and then but I had to go back to Iowa, and I hitchhiked back there, and you could hitchhike it in those days. People would pick you up. Anybody, like if you saw a Volkswagen bus go by, you could pretty well, you had like at least an 80% chance that bus was going to stop and pick you up. Probably be some hippies inside, and they'd probably have some pot. You never know. And girls would pick up guys. It was just amazing. Well, anyway, I got home, and we're in my hometown back in Iowa. That was I had a few friends there, but all my kind of more intellectual friends, of course, were off in colleges and universities, so just my blue collar friends, and they did not really think I was much of a hero. They thought I was basically crazy. I mean, why would I do such a stupid, insane thing? I was going to go to prison or something like this. I thought I was nuts. I went down to Cedar Rapids. My mom drove me down there. I had a court-appointed lawyer because I didn't have hardly any money. And my court-appointed lawyer he hated me. He was a Republican. He didn't want this case. He'd never had a case like this. He just got stuck with it. He told my mom I would be raped. He said probably happened the first night. He made my mom cry. I was just furious with the guy. Anyway, we go in there. He says he'll make up some crap about how the war is bad, but it's not going to make a damn bit of difference. That kid's going to prison. That's what he tells my mom. And I think he thought I deserved to go to prison. He was for the war. So the magistrate sets the trial. It's only like 3 weeks away. I was amazed because I always thought that, you know, it took forever to try anybody in the United States, and boy, was I wrong. You know, like three weeks later, I think was the trial date. So I go back to my hometown, and I feel like I'm just doomed. And you know, nobody pays much attention to me. And once in a while, I get a long distance phone call from my friends out in Seattle, but I'm going to prison. And then the day before the trial, the phone rings, and it's my lawyer, and he's angry. And the reason he's angry is the charges had been dropped. It turned out the United States attorney for that area, he was looking at the list of cases, the docket, and he saw my case. He was not handling it personally. One of his underlings was handling it, and he said, "What's this? What's this thing here?" And the young man tells him, well, you know, he's a draft card guy. He sent his draft card back to his draft board. And so the U.S. attorney, of course, is a Republican, but he says, well, have we ever sent anybody to prison for that? And, well, no, we never have. And, well, is anybody else? And you know, the guy has no idea. And so the U.S. attorney gets on the phone, and he calls up several other U.S. attorneys around the country. And he says, did you ever send a college kid to prison for sending back his draft card? And not a single person had done it. So he said, you know, I'm not going to be the first one to do it. Um, so he calls up my lawyer and he dropped the charges. And I flew back to Seattle, and, you know, I lived the life of an anti-war hero.